Hey guys, before I start this video, I wanted to say, I'm always curious what time my viewers watch these stories from all over the world. What time is it where you are right now?
The day Maggie Hale saw him, the world had gone quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet, in that heavy way storms sometimes wait before breaking. The wind had stopped carrying dust through the canyon. Even the crows that haunted the ridge had taken to watching from their perches as though they too were waiting for something. Maggie stood outside her small cabin, sleeves rolled, hands raw from scrubbing blood off her porch steps. 2 days ago, a coyote had gotten into her coop again. But this time, it wasn't the coyote she was angry at. It was the tracks beside it. Moccasin prints. Human. The war between settlers and the Apache had ended months ago, but fear didn't listen to treaties. It clung to people like a fever, and Maggie knew better than to let her guard drop. When she spotted the man on the ridge that morning, every muscle in her body tightened. He didn't move, just stood there, dark against the light, his braid trailing down his back like a streak of shadow. He watched her, and then he disappeared. That night, Maggie lit only one candle. The rest of the cabin sat in darkness, the fire long dead. She'd bolted the doors, but her nerves didn't care for logic. She kept hearing things, the groan of the porch wood, the whisper of wind through the crack of the window. It wasn't until the second night that he came closer. The dogs barked first, sharp and terrified. Maggie snatched her husband's old rifle from above the hearth, pressing it to her shoulder the way she'd practiced since his death. Through the window, she saw a figure by the barn, moving slow. Her voice broke the still air. "Show yourself!" No answer. Just the faint creak of the barn door opening. Maggie stepped out barefoot, rifle tight in her hands. The dirt was cold. The lantern flame in her grip trembled against the wind. Inside the barn, the horses stamped, restless. And standing near them, his hand raised to calm them, was the same man from the ridge. He turned, calm as though he'd expected her. "You shouldn't shout like that," he said in broken English, voice deep and low. "It draws things worse than men." Maggie raised the rifle. "You're on my land." He didn't flinch. "Your land?" His eyes drifted to the earth beneath them. "Wasn't always yours." Her heart pounded, anger flaring hot under her skin. "You have no right to be here." He gave a small nod, not in agreement but in understanding. Then he turned back to the horse, a mare she'd nursed back from a leg wound weeks ago. The animal leaned into his touch as though recognizing something familiar in him. Maggie lowered the lantern a little. "What do you want?" He looked up at her, gaze steady. "To return something." From a pouch at his side, he drew out a small silver trinket, her husband's missing spur, the one she thought stolen after the last Apache raid. Her throat tightened. "Where did you get that?" His answer came quiet, but it hit her like a shot. "From the man who wore it. He died in my hands." The air between them froze. The night pressed closer. For a long time, neither of them moved. Only the sound of the horses breathing and the faint creak of the barn's beams filled the space. Then Taza took one step forward and placed the spur gently on the ground between them. "I did not kill him," he said. "But I was there." Maggie's grip trembled on the rifle. She wanted to hate him, needed to. But something in his eyes made it impossible to tell whether he was her enemy or just another man carrying ghosts. He walked past her toward the open door. "You shouldn't stay alone," he said as he passed. "Not here." And then, as quietly as he'd come, he was gone. That night, Maggie sat by her window until the candle died, staring at the ridge he had first appeared on. Somewhere deep down, under all the fear and fury, she knew one thing. He would come back, and when he did, she wasn't sure whether she'd shoot him or ask him why he looked at her like that. By morning, the world outside had lost its sharpness. The ridge looked ordinary again, like it hadn't been the stage for ghosts. But Maggie Hale didn't feel the same. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face again. The stranger's steady eyes, the slow way he'd spoken, the silence after his words. "He died in my hands." The sentence wouldn't leave her. Maggie moved through her chores with a stiffness that came from exhaustion and anger. She chopped wood, fed the horses, fixed the latch he'd opened. But underneath all of it was that same uneasy question. If he hadn't killed her husband, why had he been there when he died? Near midday, she heard hooves. Not her horse. Too light, too careful. Her heart seized. She grabbed her rifle again, but when she stepped outside, it wasn't the man from last night. It was 2 white men from town, McKinley and Harrow, riding with the look of men who didn't ask permission. "Mornin', Mrs. Hale," Harrow said, tipping his hat. "Heard someone's been snooping round your place." She forced her voice even. "Coyotes mostly," McKinley spat in the dirt. Tracks we found weren't coyotes. They were moccasins. He leaned forward in his saddle, grinning in that way that never reached his eyes. "You see any of them redskins lately?" Maggie's grip on the rifle tightened. No, they didn't believe her. She could see it in the way McKinley's eyes swept the ridge behind her cabin, searching for movement. "You let us know if you do," Harrow said. "Wouldn't want you ending up like your husband." When they rode off, dust trailing behind them, Maggie stood still for a long while. Only when they were gone did she exhale. It hit her then. If they found Taza, they wouldn't ask questions. They'd shoot first and brag about it later, and she didn't know why that thought bothered her as much as it did. The day stretched into afternoon. Maggie carried a bucket down to the stream a half-mile behind her property. The water shimmered, cold and bright under the sun. She knelt, filling the bucket, her eyes flicking constantly toward the trees. She heard the soft crack of a branch. "Show yourself," she said, not shouting this time. Taza stepped out from the shade. No weapon raised, no sign of threat, just watching her again, quiet as the wind through the grass. "You shouldn't be here," she said. He nodded slightly. "You said that before," she straightened. "Those men from town, they'll shoot you if they see you." "I know." His calm made her uneasy. He crouched by the stream, dipped his hand into the water, and drank. She watched the water drip down his wrist, noticed the small scars there. Old ones, healed rough. After a moment, he said, "Your husband. He was not a bad man." Maggie froze. "You knew him?" Taza looked up at her. "He tried to help a boy who was shot." "My brother." Her breath caught. "He was young," Taza continued, voice low. 14. A soldier's bullet went through his leg. Your husband found us and gave him water. He tried to take out the bullet. What happened? He died anyway." His eyes flickered down to the stream. "Your husband stayed until morning. When soldiers came, he told them to run. He lied for us. That is why I was there when he fell." The words settled in Maggie's chest like stones. "My husband was..." She swallowed. "He was stubborn, but he wouldn't have stood by and watched someone die." Taza gave a small nod. "He saved a life before he lost his own." Silence stretched again. Maggie wanted to thank him, or curse him, for bringing this to her. But before she could speak, he said quietly, "You shouldn't carry hate for ghosts. It keeps them close." Then he stood and started to walk away, vanishing between the tall grass. Maggie called out without thinking, "Wait!" He stopped but didn't turn. "If they find you out here," she said, her voice rough, "they'll hang you. At least stay near the ridge. It's safer." For the first time, she saw the faintest hint of a smile ghost across his face. "Safer," he echoed. "Near you?" Her cheeks flushed, anger rising to cover confusion. "Just go." He nodded once and disappeared into the dust. That night, she didn't lock the window. She told herself it was because she was tired, but she knew better. She wanted to see the ridge again. When she finally blew out the candle, the ridge was empty, but she could feel eyes watching her through the dark. Not with malice this time, but with something quieter. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. The next few days passed in uneasy quiet. The ridge stayed empty, but Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Not in a cruel way. Just the quiet kind of watching. The sort that made the hair on her neck rise even when the sun was out. By the 4th morning, the chickens were restless again. One of them had gone missing, and there were coyote tracks near the fence line. Maggie grabbed her rifle, muttering under her breath, and followed the trail. But halfway down the path, she noticed something strange. The prints were faint, scattered, and beside them were new ones. Moccasins. Her chest tightened. "Taza," she whispered, though she didn't know if she wanted it to be him or not. The trail led into a cluster of rocks near the dry creek. The air smelled of dust and sage. That's where she saw him again, crouched low, inspecting something on the ground. When he looked up, there was blood on his fingers. Not his own, a coyote's. "You're following me now?" she said sharply. He didn't answer right away. "You shouldn't walk this far alone." She stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here at all." Those men came back. They're riding the ridge every morning now. Taza wiped the blood from his hand onto the dirt. "Looking for me?" "Yes," she said. "And if they find you, I know." He straightened, towering over her. "Then why did you tell them nothing?" The question caught her off guard. She looked away, angry that he'd noticed. "Because they'd burn the house down just to smoke you out. That's why." He tilted his head, studying her. "You don't lie well," she glared. "And you don't belong here." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Then why do you sound like you want me to stay?" Maggie's breath hitched, just for a second, before she turned away. "You don't know what you're talking about." But before she could walk off, Taza caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. His hand was warm, rough, steady. "I came to warn you," he said. "Those men, they're not hunting me anymore. They're watching your land." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because they think you're hiding me. They'll come at night." She tried to pull free, but his grip held, gentle but unyielding. "If they come," he said, voice quiet, "leave the lights dark. Let them pass. I'll take care of it." She shook her head. "You can't fight them all." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. There was something in his eyes, something dangerous and steady, that told her he wasn't afraid to try. After a moment, he released her wrist and turned toward the ridge. "You should go home before they see you here. Taza." Her voice came out softer than she meant it to. "Why are you helping me?" He paused at the edge of the rocks. "Because your husband once helped my brother," he said. "And because you're not like the others." That night, Maggie didn't light a candle. She sat by the window with her rifle on her lap, waiting. The dogs barked once, then went silent. The air grew thick, almost electric. Somewhere beyond the barn, she heard hooves, slow, deliberate. Maggie's pulse thudded in her ears. She slipped outside, keeping to the shadows. 3 riders were at the far fence line, whispering low. McKinley was one of them. She caught fragments of words: Apache, bounty, burn it if we have to. Her throat went dry. Then from the darkness near the ridge, a shape moved. Taza, silent as smoke, crouched behind the rocks, watching them. For a heartbeat, their eyes met across the dark. And in that silent, breathless exchange, Maggie felt it. Trust. Unwanted but real. She didn't call out. She didn't warn him. She just waited. One of the riders dismounted, heading toward her barn with a torch. Before he reached the door, something whistled through the night. An arrow, cutting clean through the dark. The man dropped the torch, cursing, his hat flying off. The others shouted, scrambling to draw their guns. Maggie raised her rifle but didn't fire. Taza's second arrow hit the ground near their horses, and the animals panicked, bolting down the path. Within seconds, the men were gone, shouting curses into the wind as they rode back toward town. Silence settled again. When it was over, Taza didn't come to her door. He stayed near the ridge, shadowed by moonlight, watching, making sure she was safe before he vanished once more. Maggie sank to her knees on the porch, trembling, not from fear, but from something she didn't want to name. By dawn, the only sign of what happened were the tracks in the dirt and a broken torch lying near the barn. Maggie picked it up, turning it in her hands. Her pulse hadn't slowed all morning. The man she'd once feared now stood between her and danger. And that realization scared her more than any stranger ever could. 2 days passed without sight of him. The ridge stayed empty, and Maggie told herself that was good. She even said it out loud once while sweeping the porch. "Good riddance," she muttered, though her voice cracked at the end. But every evening when the light dimmed, she found herself glancing toward the horizon anyway, waiting for movement that never came. The quiet wasn't peace anymore. It was a hole she couldn't stop looking into. On the third day, rain rolled in from the west, rare, heavy, and sudden. By nightfall, the wind howled hard enough to shake the windows. Maggie ran outside to tie the barn doors before they blew open. Mud splattered her dress, soaking the hem. The horses stomped and snorted, restless. She was fastening the last latch when she heard it, faint, half buried in the thunder. A voice. Taza? At first, she thought she imagined it. Then she saw him, staggering toward her through the rain, his shirt torn, blood streaked across his arm. She rushed forward before she could think. What happened? Men, he said simply, his breath shallow. The ones from town. Found my camp. She grabbed his arm, dragging him inside the barn as the rain poured harder. His skin was burning hot under her hand. They'll come here, he said, trying to pull away. But his strength was gone. Then you'll have to hide. I can't stay. You can barely stand. He looked at her. Really looked. Like he wanted to argue. But something in her eyes must have stopped him. He leaned against the wooden post, breathing hard. The cut on his shoulder wasn't deep, but it bled steadily. Without a word, Maggie fetched an old tin basin, poured water, and tore a strip from her underskirt. She cleaned the wound in silence, her hands steady even as her heart thudded wildly. When he winced, she murmured, "Hold still." He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. The storm outside roared, drowning out the rest of the world. For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound was rain hitting the roof and her quiet movements as she wrapped the cloth around his arm. Finally, Taza said softly, "You should not help me. They will see us both as traitors." She looked up at him. "Maybe I'm tired of being what they want me to be." That made him pause. His eyes searched hers, and the silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was thick, charged. Her hand lingered just a moment too long on his skin before she pulled back. "You should rest," she said quickly. "I will not stay here." "Then where?" He hesitated, rain dripping from his hair. "There is a canyon north of here. They will not find me there." She stood, arms crossed. "You won't make it in this storm." "I have walked through worse." Something in the way he said it, calm, stubborn, certain, made her both furious and afraid. "You're impossible," she snapped. He almost smiled. "So are you." She turned away, flustered, then froze when thunder cracked loud overhead. Instinctively, Taza reached out, catching her elbow to steady her. It was nothing, a reflex, but the touch burned through both of them. For a moment, they didn't move. His hand stayed there, warm on her arm. Her breath caught somewhere between anger and something else she didn't dare name. The air between them felt too alive, too sharp. Then she pulled away. "Stay in the barn tonight," she said, her voice unsteady. "If they come, I'll keep the lights out." He watched her, rain glistening down his face before nodding once. "Thank you. Maggie Hale." She turned before he could see the way her cheeks flushed at the sound of her name on his tongue. That night, Maggie lay awake listening to the storm fade. Every creak of the barn, every gust of wind made her heart leap, not from fear, but from knowing he was there, only a few steps away. And when the thunder rolled softer and the rain turned to a whisper, she realized she wasn't waiting for the storm to pass anymore. She was waiting for morning. Morning came soft and gray, the kind of quiet that feels like the world's holding its breath. Mist rolled low over the hills, and the rain left the air smelling like wet earth and smoke. Maggie hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, his face lit by candlelight, the line of his jaw when she'd wrapped his wound, the way he'd said her name like it was something sacred. When she stepped outside, the sky was pale, the storm finally gone. The barn door creaked when she pushed it open. Inside, Taza was awake, already standing, his shirt half-buttoned and darkened by dried rain. He looked better, still tired, but alive. "You should have rested more," she said quietly. He glanced at her. "The longer I stay, the more danger for you," she frowned. Don't flatter yourself. I've been in trouble long before you came limping through my yard. That earned a faint, tired smile from him, but he didn't move. Maggie set down a small bundle on the table. Bread, a flask of water, and an old coat. If you're set on leaving, at least take this. His eyes softened. You don't have to. I know. She folded her arms, trying to look unaffected. But if you die in that canyon, I'll be real mad about wasting perfectly good flour on you. That almost made him laugh. Almost. But then, before she could turn to leave, he said her name again. Softer this time. Maggie, she looked at him. The sunlight from the cracks in the wood touched his face, catching the faint scar near his jaw, the sharp stillness in his eyes. He stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, but enough that she could feel the heat from him. I will come back for the horse, he said. Sure you will, she said, though her voice didn't sound like hers anymore. I mean it. I'm sure you do. They stood there, two stubborn people pretending not to care. Then, through the thin silence, he reached for the flask and brushed her fingers as he took it. It was nothing more than a graze, but she froze all the same. His touch was rough, calloused, but there was a gentleness in it too, the kind that made her chest ache. You're shaking, he said quietly. It's cold. It's not. She hated how right he was. He didn't move closer, but the air between them changed, like the world had narrowed down to just this barn, this breath, this space between their shadows. She tried to look away, but his gaze pinned her in place. You risked everything, he said. For me, why? Because I could, she said too fast. Then softer. Because no one ever would have done the same for me. He stared at her for a long time, not pitying, not soft, just seeing her in a way no one had in years. You're not like them, he murmured. And you think that's a good thing? I think it's the only thing that keeps you alive. Something in her broke a little then, not enough to fall apart, just enough to feel. The sound of the wind outside filled the pause. Maggie took a step back, trying to breathe normally. You should go before I change my mind. He nodded once, slowly, like he was memorizing her face. You have a fire inside you, he said. It's dangerous. Then it suits me. For the first time he smiled, a real one. Small, but warm enough to make her heartbeat trip over itself. He slung the coat over his shoulder, took the bundle, and pushed open the barn door. Light spilled in, soft gold new. He stepped out into it, then paused. If I don't come back, then I'll know you were stupid after all, she cut in, because if she didn't make it a joke, she might say something she couldn't take back. He almost laughed again, shaking his head. Goodbye, Maggie Hale. Don't say goodbye, he hesitated. Then what should I say? She thought for a moment, her throat tight. Just, see you. He held her gaze for one last heartbeat. See you. Then he walked away. Slow, steady, vanishing into the mist that curled around the hills. Maggie stood there long after he was gone, staring at the trail until it blurred. She told herself it didn't matter, that he was just another ghost passing through her life. But when she went back inside, she realized he'd left something behind. Not just the faint scent of smoke and rain, but his knife on the table, carved with a sun symbol near the hilt. Her fingers brushed the handle. And for the first time in years, Maggie Hale smiled, the kind of smile that burned at the edges, because he would come back. She could feel it in her bones. The days stretched long after he left. Maggie kept herself busy, mending fences, feeding the horses, fixing the leak in the roof she'd ignored for months. Anything to keep her hands moving, because when they stopped, her mind went back to him, to the storm, to his hand brushing hers, to the way his voice sounded when he said, see you. By the fourth morning, she stopped pretending she wasn't waiting. Every sound from the hills made her lift her head. Every shadow near the ridge made her heart stumble. But instead of Taza, 3 men rode up the trail. She recognized them, the same ones who'd harassed her at the market a month back, wearing that same smug look that made her fingers itch for her rifle. Morning, Miss Hale, one of them drawled, dismounting. Heard you've been keeping interesting company. Maggie's stomach tightened. You heard wrong. The man chuckled, kicking at the dirt. Funny. Couple of riders said they saw an Apache limping north. Looked patched up. Thought maybe he got that help somewhere. She forced a laugh. Maybe he's smarter than he looks. Or maybe, the second man said, stepping closer, someone around here's forgetting who she belongs with. That did it. Maggie met his gaze, eyes cold. I don't belong to anyone. Silence. Then the first man grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Where's the barn key? You planning to fix my fences too? She said flatly. He smiled wider. Just checking for any guests. Maggie didn't answer. She just lifted her shotgun from behind the door. The click of it echoing through the porch made them pause. Touch that latch, she said, and I'll scatter your teeth across my yard. The third man spat on the ground. Feisty little thing. Try me. For a moment, no one moved. The horses shifted uneasily. The wind picked up, whispering through the grass. Then the first man smirked, backing up a step. You'll regret crossing us, Maggie Hale. She didn't lower the gun. Already do. They rode off laughing, but it wasn't the kind of laughter that fades. It lingered, low and mean, all the way down the hill. When they disappeared, Maggie let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hands shook only when she finally set the gun down. That night, she didn't light the lamp. She sat by the window in the dark, rifle resting across her knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind had changed. She could feel it. The quiet before something heavy. By midnight, the sky went black, and a single crow landed on the fence post outside. Then another. Then 3. She whispered under her breath. Where are you, Taza? As if in answer, a faint whistle echoed through the hills, short, low, deliberate. Her heart jumped. She grabbed the lantern and stepped out onto the porch. At first, she saw nothing, just the fog rolling thick and the moonlight brushing the edge of the trees. Then he appeared. Taza. But not like before. This time, he looked different, worn, blood on his sleeve again, dirt smeared across his face, eyes sharp and wild from running. He stopped a few steps away. They're coming, he said. I know, she breathed. He shook his head. No, not the ones from town, more. Her blood ran cold. How many? 5, maybe 6. They followed me. They'll be here by dawn. She didn't flinch. Then we'll make sure they regret it. He stared at her. This woman standing barefoot in the dirt, hair loose, shotgun in one hand and fire in her eyes, and something in him cracked open. He stepped closer, voice low. You could still leave. Hide in the hills, and let them burn my land. She shot back. Not a chance. Taza exhaled through his nose, half in disbelief, half in admiration. You are madness. Then you shouldn't have come back, she said. I didn't have a choice. Their eyes met, sharp, fierce, alive. Lightning flared far off, just enough to outline their faces. The world seemed to hold still again, the same way it had in the barn that night. Except this time, there was no hesitation left between them. She took a step closer, her voice steady. We'll need bullets, lanterns, rope. I already checked the ridge, he said. They'll come from the south. Then that's where we'll meet them. They stood side by side on the porch, 2 figures against the empty fields, farmer's daughter and Apache warrior, with the scent of rain and gunpowder in the air. And when the crows took flight all at once, black wings cutting through the moonlight, Maggie smiled for the first time that night. It wasn't fear she felt. It was the fire in her chest roaring back to life. The air before sunrise felt like a held breath. Everything was still, too still. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Taza crouched by the window, loading the last of the bullets into Maggie's rifle. His movements were quiet, precise. Beside him, Maggie checked the lanterns, then the doors, then the rope tied along the barn gate, traps rigged to rattle when anyone stepped too close. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. When the first crow cawed in the dark, they both knew it was time. Taza glanced at her once. "Stay behind the door. Fire only when you see them." She shook her head. "You'll need cover from the ridge." "Maggie, don't argue," she said sharply. "You saved me once. I'm not letting you die for it." His jaw clenched, but he didn't push it. There wasn't time. Moments later, the night shattered. A gunshot echoed through the field. Then another. Maggie ducked behind the doorway, firing back when she saw movement near the fence. Splinters flew from the posts. Horses screamed. Taza was already outside, moving low, silent, a shadow among shadows. The first man barely saw him before the tomahawk hit the ground beside his boot. A second later, Taza had him down, rifle in hand. The world turned into flashes, light, smoke, thunder. Maggie fired until the barrel burned her palms. One of the attackers tried circling the barn. She caught him in her sights and didn't miss. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of the shots. Steady, fierce, alive. When the last man ran, bleeding into the darkness, the silence that followed felt deafening. Maggie stood in the doorway, chest heaving, smoke curling from the rifle. The horizon was faintly red now. Not fire, but dawn. She looked around the yard. Fallen bodies, trampled mud, the faint glint of spent shells in the dirt. Then she saw Taza, walking toward her through the mist, limping but upright. Her throat tightened. "You're hurt." He gave a half smile. "So are you." She looked down, her sleeve torn, a shallow graze across her arm. She hadn't even felt it. "Guess we make a fine pair." He stopped a few feet from her. "They will come again. Maybe not today, but I don't care." That made him pause. "I've been running from ghosts since the day my husband died," she said quietly. "I'm done running." He stared at her, the stubbornness in her chin, the tremor in her voice she tried to hide, and something softened in his expression. Then, slowly, he reached out and brushed the dirt from her cheek. His fingers lingered there, tracing the faint line of her jaw. For once, she didn't pull away. "You could come with me," he said, his voice low. "Leave this place. The land, the men, the memories. There's more than this." She swallowed hard. "And live how? Out there, I'd be the intruder." His gaze didn't waver. "And here, I am." The truth in his words hit like a blow. They stood there, caught between two worlds that had no room for them. Until finally Maggie whispered, "Then maybe we stay in the middle." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "This land, these fields. No one's claimed them yet." Understanding flickered in his eyes. Then, for the first time, he smiled. Not a smirk or a rare flicker of amusement, but something real. When he leaned in, she didn't stop him. The kiss wasn't desperate or soft. It was tired, bruised, and full of everything they'd both fought to feel. Outside, the crows screamed overhead, taking flight into the rising sun. When they finally pulled apart, Maggie rested her forehead against his chest, breathing in the scent of smoke and rain. "Guess I didn't resist you after all," she murmured. Taza's hand brushed through her hair. "You never had to." And as the first light of morning stretched across the valley, over the barn, the porch, the rifle still smoking on the ground, Maggie Hale realized something she hadn't dared admit until now. She wasn't the widow waiting for peace anymore. She was the woman who fought for her own, and beside her stood the man who had taught her how.
Subscribe to motivate me to write more. Comment what kind of story you want next. I read them all. See you guys in the next video. See ya.